You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
That wasn't a win, it was a statement. And I'm talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
What's happening? Yeah, that was a pretty convincing W. They needed that, and now it's time to see how they respond, as we've been here before. But the more times they put together ones like that, I think the quicker they can get to consistency. It was nice to see.
How late were you up last night?
1 a.m. 1 a.m. Mountain Time, 3 a.m. your time. So watching some votes get counted, playing some pool, did the After Dark show, and was just basking in that nice Maple Leafs W.
Yeah, I feel like you were in Zen mode last night, feeling really, really good about life, particularly the Leafs game. I think they had a lot to offer last night, which is a bonus. I was in the room last night. I was telling you off air, bringing it on air now. I was in the room last night for the first time in quite some time. Very nostalgic, man. You've been in that room. You've laced up in that room. It's so cool to be in the Maple Leafs room, man.
I know, that's funny. You're in the scrums now. I wonder if you gotta watch out for flying sock tape or something from some of the guys you've been a little hard on. Is that cross your mind or no?
No, not at all. I wouldn't say anything I couldn't back up in person. Etiquette wise, I've always been that guy who stands at the back. The scrums are much bigger, I would say, in Toronto than most markets, but I did forget how much your arms start to hurt when you're holding the mic up for like 3 minutes at a time, man. I got to hit the gym more, longer, harder, I think.
I don't know why you guys don't just have one mic and then just hit send.
No.
It's like when you're taking a picture of someone, they're like, "Oh, do one with mine. Oh, do one with mine." It's like
Yeah.
you can send that through the air instantly. It's like people, oh, that's my pet peeve, I think, of all time, when friends are taking the same bloody picture and just it doesn't click in. How about you just send me the first one we did?
Dude, it's funny you say that. It's the one thing that hasn't caught up in media from when I started, 15 some odd years ago, where you had to collect audio to now. You would think there'd be a quicker way for everybody to receive that audio with one mic, but it hasn't gone accordingly. Like the reason why I was in the scrums last night was getting audio for the leafsnation.com, which you should check out right now, because what happens is the audio and the video takes too long to get online for people to see, for people to react to include in their articles. So that's why everybody gets their own audio. But you're so right. Why isn't there just one feed? The audio goes up and boom, you got your post game sound.
I know, have one thing and then just have it on AirPlay and everyone can just click, send that to me, send that to me, send that to me. But I don't act like we are wizards in the tech industry, as we have had our own issues with this podcast in particular, haven't we?
I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. P-Mail Bacon writes in, you have media access, Nick. Yes, I do. In fact, this season have media access. It's been really cool, honestly, reconnecting with, as many of you know, I was a Leafs radio host for a couple of years with Sportsnet, and just seeing familiar faces around the rinks, from some of the ushers to everybody involved in the press box to our guy, Jimmy Ralph, who calls the games on the radio, Joe Bowen. Like it's really, really cool. I think you sort of take it for granted in the moment, but again, being in that room, I think is unreal. Just walking around next to you, see like Max Domi, Revo. I saw Oliver Ekman-Larsson last night. Like it's a really cool feel being a media member in Toronto. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no doubt. Would I have credentials if I was there to go in the room?
I doubt it. I doubt
What?
it. You would be in the box. You're a former player, alumni,
I know,
buddy.
but we're ripping a show now. That would be too weird to go in there as a media guy. I don't think I could do it. But no question. That building's cool. Anything to do with the actual Leafs and being around their amenities is always top notch. And I'd like to pop my head in there, a little blast from the past. I remember showing my dad around the room with a good friend of his who lives in Toronto. And after my first game, we cruised around and they just checked out everything and we're kind of blown away by it being the real deal. So yeah, that's kind of neat. You're in there popping your head, getting the quotes. Anything stand out to you?
No, they played a good game. Marner was good. Like we're gonna go over it. These guys are so conditioned to say the right things that when I'm in media scrums anymore, I zone out. I look around. Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, was beside me. Just Anadua, who I worked with at the NHL, now with Sportsnet. So you see the familiar faces in the mix. But I think that would be such a funny gag if we can set it up where we get you a media pass and we put you in the scrums. I wonder how that would go.
It would probably go fine. They'd be like, "Who's this pigeon walking in our room right now?" But I'd just be cruising around sniffing the jocks, probably, right? That's what I am now.
Who was it? Who was it we interviewed last year? I had no clue who you were. Was it Cade Weber?
I don't remember, but it doesn't really surprise me either. These kids are
I
getting young.
forget who it was. You're like, oh, some guy named like we made a point. Oh, it was Ben Danford. Thank you, producer Vic. It was Ben Danford who they took in the first round last year, and we should have brought the fact up that you were a Maple Leaf and you had no clue, man.
Well, if I got drafted and they asked me who some pigeon fourth liner was from
True.
12 years ago, there's not a lot of chance I would know either. So I wasn't offended at all.
I guess not everybody's like a super fan like me or producer Vic, where I can tell you about like Jeff Farkas and Lonnie Bohannes and like, Robert Shfela. Like I remember guys that you have no business remembering who were Maple Leafs, quite frankly. Jeff Finger,
Fingy. That guy's a beauty, man.
Zach Sill, producer Vic brings up. Like there's just so many names
Keith
that have donned the
Ollie.
blue and white. Yeah, man. Tim Conley.
Timmy. I had to drag him out of a bar in Montreal one time at 3:30 in the morning. That was tough sledding, but I was a responsible, good teammate that night. Attaboy, Timmy.
There's a bunch of guys like, when we started this show a couple years ago, and naturally we've gotten some really good guests. There's a couple guys I would love to speak to. Tim Conley's on that list. David Clarkson, who I've been talking to, I've been trying to get. It's just not going to happen. Phil Kessel, Tyler Bozak, Dion Phaneuf. Like there's just so many names when you take this job. When I took this job, I'm like, crap, like I can work my contacts, see if I can get them on the show, but minimal interest, or you can't find these guys. Like Jeff Finger, I don't know where to start to find that guy.
Oh, he's in Minnesota or Wisconsin, in the bush, in the
Exactly.
trees, in a cabin, purposely not plugging into any of this kind of stuff. And he always said that, man. He was such a good down to earth guy. Got a fat contract in Toronto, and maybe they overpaid a little bit. And I remember him saying from the day I signed it, I put down the phone after telling my agent, let's go ahead with that. And it came through Bob McKenzie's phone on Free Agent Frenzy. And he said they just started tearing me apart right there, saying, what are they thinking? He said, from that day on, I had this anvil on my shoulders and this dark cloud following me around, and he hated it, and rightfully so. It was tough sledding, but if all you care about is money, hey, you got paid. But he was a great guy who didn't really get a fair shake in Toronto, I don't think.
No, that's fair. And I feel like the pendulum swinging the other way, because you look at some of the contracts they signed this past offseason. OEL at 3.5 sheets a year, outstanding. Anthony Stolarz at 2.5 over 2 years has been a fantastic find as well for the Maple Leafs. A lot of people in the chat, by the way, say they would love to see you in a scrum with Mitch Marner. We got to make that happen. He was made available last night because it was his best game of the season. He was great.
Yeah, did you go ask him some of the hard hitters or what?
I'm not really a question asker, man. Like I just stand there. What am I going to ask that's any different? I mean, I'm probably going to get a sarcastic reply like that. I'm the last person they want to hear from. I think it's like the generic questions. How did you feel about the power play? What do you think of the PK? What do you think of the goaltending? I was going to ask about the team's record without Austin Matthews. We talked about this yesterday. Did we not call it on the show yesterday, Rosie?
Yeah, we called it. I didn't know where it was going to land, if it was going to do, like, it's getting to the point where they do the backward stuff so often, it's getting obvious and should be automatic. And even Vegas is on with it. So
I know.
It's interesting, but yeah, without Austin Matthews, they get 3 peeper goals. They have a convincing shutout win against their rivals. Once again, it doesn't really make sense. Or does it?
It doesn't. Producer Vic makes an excellent point, by the way. I asked Jay Rosehill questions the entire show. That's a valid point, Rosie.
I know.
I'll
You're
take
like,
that.
I don't know what to ask in those scrums. I'm like, feel like that's kind of your job, but hey, you do you, buddy.
Fair enough. We got Brian Burke on today's podcast. You all know him very well. In fact, I was at the game I mentioned last night, ran into Berkey in the elevator, said hello, said thank you for coming on. Great, always sort of quickly catching up with Berkey. Of course, now the current executive director of the Professional Women's Hockey League Players Association, former Leafs GM and president when Rosie was there. So Brian Burke's coming up in about 20 minutes here, Rosie.
Yeah, he's always got good, interesting takes that are oftentimes unique to him, and we'll see what he thinks about this era of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, it's fresh in our minds, a convincing win last night against the longtime rival Boston Bruins, but it's always good to pick Berkey's brain, and we'll look forward to having him on here shortly.
Salvatore writes in, worst signing in Maple Leafs franchise history, Jay Rosehill.
Attaboy, Salvatore. Good job, buddy. It
I
was a
love how
big
the
night.
chat turns against us, man. Like we got beaked more in this chat than anywhere else on social media. It's kind of funny. It's like you watch our show and then chirp us, but maybe it's good fun humor.
I know Twitter's actually pretty chill for that. I figure, but yeah, chat likes to come on and rip us up. Have at her, boys. Just
Telling you, the last couple of years was the Dubasites and the Key fans. Now that I think we're all in simpatico, we're all aligned. We got the right head coach, you got the right GM, and onward and upwards we go with this organization and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Get those super chats in at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take. Wherever you find your podcast, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and don't forget to visit the leafsnation.com. I actually put up a story late last night that I think will be filed today about Lane Lambert and the job he's done with the penalty kill thus far this season. He has been outstanding, and so is the Leafs PK in general. We're getting to that coming up here on Leafs Morning Take. Prime Monday Night Hockey on Prime Video is here, Rosie, the exclusive home for the NHL on Monday nights in Canada. Next up is a Remembrance Day tilt in Calgary as the Flames host the Los Angeles Kings. You can watch Prime Monday Night Hockey on Prime Video at no added cost through their membership. Just check out the sports section when you're inside the app. If you currently don't have a Prime membership, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial. Additionally, students are able to sign up for a 6-month free trial at amazon.ca/Amazon Prime. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's on Prime. Can you guess who the last Leafs goalie was to post a shutout against the Boston Bruins? It's been 20 years, or twice done in 20 years.
yeah, I saw that and I was like, who would that be?
I'll answer for you. The Monster.
Come
December
on.
19th, 2009, man. 15 years ago was the last time the Leafs shut out the Boston Bruins. I was reading the stat pack after the game. I couldn't believe that. So kudos to Anthony Stolarz, man. Again, this has been a massive story in the first couple games of this season, but I thought he made some massive saves last night, 29 in total. First shutout as a Maple Leaf.
Yeah, I was talking about on the After Dark show, like that's just you're playing so rock solid, and that game was kind of up for grabs for a good chunk of it. Um, and it just so many times it could easily go the other way, right? Like pick one of your big saves. What did he have? 4 like massive
Yeah.
big saves where 85% of the time the goalie doesn't make that save, and he made a handful of those. It could easily have gone 1-1, 2-1 in any other era. And I mean, that's all it takes. That's why that position is so integral to having success long term. If you don't have that and that guy to make that 1 or 2 or 3 saves per win, then it's not a win. Like it's just that big of a difference, man. And he's been making them all season long at such a rate that I feel like it's inevitable to take it for granted and just rely on him and assume he's going to make those ones. It's just becoming, very reliable. And I didn't see it coming to this level. Nobody did. I don't know if he's kind of always been quietly that good, but he's never really gotten the shot. But as we look back, that injury to Joseph Wall, it's a massive opportunity for him to show his stuff, and he has done that and then some, and his stock is just through the roof. And I hinted on the After Dark show, let's just enjoy this while it's there. He's not going to run at a 96 save percentage all year long. If he comes back down to reality, let's not say what happened to Stolarz. Let's just enjoy what he's doing right now, because he is a major factor in every win that they've had this year with him in the pipes.
It's an eerie feeling getting those saves that you've been missing for such a big period of time. Like you could probably count on one hand for sure how many weak goals he's surrendered, a la like Ilya Samsonov, not to pick on him, but like he's been very reliable, very consistent. I think you're so bang on with the assessment of this game last night. I mentioned I was there in attendance. It could have gone either way in the first period, first half of the game, where it's like you needed a couple crucial saves. There was some D zone breakdowns. And Stoli always seems to have the answer. That's been the early season theme. And quite frankly, the Leafs have been missing that in recent years, where there's just this sense of trust and reliability, I would say, to their crease. And I really, really feel strongly and feel good about where they're at, not only with Stoli, but with Joseph Wall. When healthy, I think he's going to get better and better as he gets more games under his belt. And 2.5 a year for Stolarz is looking brilliant. I know we're early on. I think you're so right. Like there's going to be some regression at some point in time, you would think, but man, he's been awesome.
Yeah, he's proving that he's capable. He's proving that he's got the stuff. He's got the confidence. He's proving that this market, he's not going to shy away from it. It doesn't affect him. It doesn't bother him. He got thrown into the fire unexpectedly. Easy recipe to flounder, falter, have a hiccup. It comes on too fast. Maybe wasn't totally prepared for that right off the bat. No, no, and no. He's just been absolutely lights out since like every like you said, there's no, I can't even think of a weak goal that he
Me
let
too.
in. It's
Yeah.
just huge save after huge save, and they're playing better in front of him. It's nice to see that decor just play more positional, just kind of clog up the middle and just not really allow a whole lot. Inevitably there's going to be chances, and when they are, there's that extra layer of Stoli back there. And so far this season, their offense has been dry as could be. Their power play has been absolutely abysmal. And I have thought, okay, you're playing well in the right areas. Now, if this team that is offensively gifted just plays regular and isn't in this huge slump, I think they have the formula to do some pretty special things. And obviously last night they got out of that slump, power play included, and it was a convincing, decisive victory over the Boston Bruins, which, all the things about history and this and the shutout, whatever. It's a very big team that we have not had any success about. And you went 60 minutes top to bottom and gave them nothing. It was a bit of a clinic.
Obviously, we're going to touch on the power play, but we have to highlight the PK. As I mentioned off the top of the show, they've been outstanding. 6 for 6. You don't want to take 6 penalties, but now sixth in the NHL. I believe the Maple Leafs have killed off 16 straight penalties, which is great to see. Like, we often talk about Mark Savard and his ongoing struggle with that power play, but Lane Lambert is the guy they brought in to coach the D and obviously run the PK, and has this history dating back to his time coaching the New York Islanders. And he's been around the game for a long time. I think he's flying completely under the radar in terms of his value to this coaching staff. But to me, there's 3 prime reasons why the PK is much better. The crease, obviously, Anthony Stolarz has had the brunt of the load. He's been excellent. Chris Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like, you improve the personnel, chances are your special teams is going to improve PK wise.
Yeah, and once you get off to a good start and you're rolling, the confidence is contagious, and it goes through everybody. And yeah, those personnel changes were huge. They're clicking, and the penalty kill rarely gets any accolades or flowers. It's kind of goes by the wayside, but it's every bit as important as the power play. And when you're shutting it down that often, again, like Stoli, when you have it, you might take it for granted, but it's crucial, man. And yeah, they're the conversation of, are they getting a little bit undisciplined, you could start to have. I don't know if I buy in or not, but they have to kill some penalties, and they've been doing it convincingly for a while now. And yeah, Lane Lambert's got that thing clicking, and between the personnel changes and the system they're running and the confidence they have right now, they're looking very solid in that department as well. The PP can continue on the road and the path they were on last night and get that percentage up where it needs to be for a premier team. Their PK's in a good spot to make that happen as well.
It just doesn't make sense. Again, all time without Austin Matthews, now 36, 19, and 2. They're averaging 3.25 goals per game, and the power play is clicking at 29.6%. Like, we called this. I mean, we called this on yesterday's show. They come out and go 3 for 7 on the power play. Can you explain this for me, Rosie?
I can't explain it. He is your best player. It doesn't make sense. The only thing I could think, if you had to put a label on it, would be they don't have that big glowing aura of Austin Matthews on that one side, where there's this tugging, nagging feeling to say, if I get this guy the puck, the percentages are as high as they could be with anyone else that I could give it to. So there's kind of always this little magnetic pull towards him. That's all I can really think with the power play. Other than that, they were shooting it down Broadway, which they don't do very often. And they got a bit of luck as well. And they just listened to the mantra of keep it simple and get pucks on net. And finally, they were rewarded. It's funny that it happens when Austin Matthews is not in, but I am far from ready to say, oh, well, he's a detriment to that power play or anything like that. That's just silly. I don't know why things happen like that. It's Leafland, man, and Leafy things happen.
Yeah, pretty much my explanation for it as well. But Kiss, keep it simple, stupid, I think applies to the power play. And that's the feel in the power play. It was far from perfect. Let's be honest. They had 7 opportunities. It looked clunky for the majority, but results are results. They scored 3 times. And the way they scored tells you all you need to know. The Riley shot, obviously, Nylander. Get some good fortune off the leg of Brandon Carlo, and then Matthew Nyes. I can't say enough about the kid's progression early on in his career. Just every game, he gets better and better, Rosie.
Yeah, my wife started paying attention, and he is now her favorite player. Apparently, he's kind of a hunk of burning love, I found out. I love that kid too, though, man. Yeah, park it in front and get one of those. Like, what have we been saying, man? Like, they keep trying to do this cross crease saucy bullshit that's blowing
Mhm.
up in their face. It has not been working. Frustration is mounting, and everyone's just saying. And on Twitter, people are like, "Oh yeah, they just throw it on." No, it's like, I'm sorry, but when you're stuck in that much of a rut, you do have to do that. And what happens? You wing it towards the net. I don't know where that one was going from Willie, but off a shin pad and in. You throw it at the net down Broadway instead of moving it around with 3 different little cut back, little fancy passes and keep it to the perimeter. Get a little bit of open ice, walk down Broadway and rip it. Guess what? You get a stick on it. Matthew Nyes is there. He's a big body in front. He can bang in a rebound, tip one, or screen the goalie. Morgan Riley's shooting. That thing had eyes. Walk down Broadway, get pucks on net. It's a simple formula that paid off for them yesterday. And there's a reason that all the people who have been in that position are saying, here's what you do to get out of a slump that these guys are in. And it's always the same. It's simplify and get pucks on net. There's a reason. It's been like that probably for 100 years.
Pretty much. So Riley gets 1 and 2. Nylander and Nyes 1 and 1. Mitch Marner again. You need your best players to rise to the occasion, specifically when you're without Austin Matthews. I thought Marner was all over it. PK, his playmaking abilities, like he really, really brought it.
Yeah, big time. I don't know, just with Austin out and him being the guy that's clipping along at the top of the league, and he's been solid this year. You figured it was either or him or Marner that needed to come out and play, and they both did. But yeah, I think we all had our money on Willie last night
Yep.
stepping up. He's got the confidence, the jam, and I think that he's a guy where when called upon or put on the spot, he likes to respond and he likes to perform. And last night was no exception. And flowers to Mitch Marner too. He looked like he was in the fight, and it looked like he was playing with some vigor last night, and he got rewarded as well. And that absolutely needed to happen. When you hear Austin Matthews is out, those guys cannot be sleeping.
That was the prototypical Craig Berube like game. I think if you were to put it on paper, that's what Craig Berube would like to see. A lot of block shots. I thought they were really feisty. The scrums, the intensity, the physicality. I couldn't help but think of you late in the first period. The Tanev hit on Pasternak, where last second Pasternak turns. I know Tanev takes a penalty, but I got no issue with that, man.
Yeah, it's probably my biggest pet peeve in hockey is when a puck carrier does nothing to protect himself and acts as if it's not full contact hit hockey, and just does these turn their back and cutbacks, and at the last minute they can feel the presence of a defenseman coming down on them, hence the cutback to get away. And this 220-pound guy going at how fast, you expect him just to stop instantly. It doesn't happen, and they put themselves in the position, and then they lay there and everyone comes flying in like it was the worst hit in the world. And it's so obvious to me. I'm like, the guy like folded himself by turning right into the guy where nothing can happen, but you get hit, quote unquote, from behind. It happens all the time, and it's usually worse. And when they start to talk about uh, the Department of Player Discipline and stuff, it drives me nuts. Thankfully, that wasn't the case in this one. But yeah, you turn like that and turn your back, you're going to get folded. And I have a problem in this league, in this day and age, with puck carriers not doing anything to protect themselves and then being shocked when they're, taking advantage of in a vulnerable position.
I thought the officiating was interesting, to say the least, in that game. We saw 13 power plays. The Nyes trip in the third period, I'm still looking to see where that trip occurred. And the whole Pacioretty thing was really confusing, man. I get why they gave him 5 minutes so they can review it, but it's like maybe in real time, and maybe you see the replay and you're like, that's not a questionable hit. But Andrew Peak did not return to the game, by the way. But Pacioretty in general, I love the physicality he's bringing. He had 5 shots on goal. Like he's he's making a difference, man. This is turning out to be a pretty decent signing early on too.
Yeah, big time. I kind of expected that. But to your point before with the officiating, I was so pleased because the ref is about to get hit. Where the other one was standing, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You can't see everything. It's a difficult job. And when when you hear a big crunch on the board, some guy's laying there, crowd goes nuts, bunch of guys kind of jump in. You don't know what the hell happened and you don't want to get it wrong. So I mean, and it's like it's an unwritten rule that you'll never go backwards on a call. And I don't understand why that is. I think a ref should be able to say, "Hey, got that wrong. I'm going backwards on this. There was no penalty." Because why is that the unwritten rule that you're just not allowed to do? I've never understood that. You can move the other way with it, but to go to video review, look at it just for the sake of getting it right. I mean, they have all these new reviews, they have umpires doing this and that. All the leagues seem to be using the technology to their advantage, and at the end of the day, all I care about is getting it right. And the fact that that looked like, I thought they might be kicking him out, and I was ready to blow my stack and go to Twitter and see if people were lighting things on fire. But they say, "Hey, we looked at it, no penalty, guys out of the box, let's resume play." It just made my heart feel so full because it's the way it should be, and all I care about is getting it right, and that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's exactly it. They got the call right, which I think is prime focus, certainly. And I think the other prevailing story was the discipline from both sides lacking. Boston and Toronto, the two most penalized teams in the league, and it played right up to par. Boston took 7 penalties, the Leafs took 6, man. I felt like every second there was a power play in that game.
Yeah, and I don't like those games. I think it sucks the momentum out of the game. It doesn't allow the intensity level to get up, and it's just a constant grind of whistles and power plays. It's not my thing. Problem is, once you start going down that road, you kind of got to keep consistent with it, and I think the refereeing got into that a little bit yesterday. But if it continues to happen, the discipline is going to become an issue, and you need to start to rectify it because you can't rely on your PK the way they have. As good as they've been, you just can't rely on them like that all year long. So we'll keep an eye on it and see if that becomes an actual issue or if it's just, the beginning of the season, the way games are getting called. But like I said, you can't continue to be on that trend.
What was your read on Boston before we get to Berkey here? It's been a very turbulent, unfamiliar start for that team. Like they looked out of flux, but again, I thought Stolarz is a big reason why the game was still tied in the first couple, minutes of the game.
Yeah, you expected Pasternak to come out. There was a lot of talk about the leadership and Montgomery calling guys out and whatnot. And that team that's won before and done the things they have and have the leadership that they have, those guys can get leaned on in that way. And that was the sentiment with everyone saying, "Hey, there's accountability here." That's a word they're using a lot. There's ups and downs with them. They haven't been as consistent as they want, but Montgomery said himself, he goes, "I am so lucky to have this leadership group here." So they're going to sort their stuff out. But, like you said, they were coming off 2 shutouts and they're just a little bit of a yo-yo right now. I think they've got the personnel to be good again, and Swayman and everything that's going on there. I think when their pieces get put in order, they'll be where they've been for a long time. And I don't think there's too much worry there, but I'm more worried about the Maple Leafs and knocking them off because it has been too long.
Yeah, no, that's it, man. That's the other prevailing story. I couldn't believe 2 years to the day today of last beating the Boston Bruins in the regular season. It's been a long time coming here. The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com as we bring in the former president and GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the current executive director of the Professional Women's Hockey League Players Association. It is Brian Burke. Hey, Burke, how's it going?
Morning, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. Great to see you last night, Burke. But what'd you make of that 4-0 victory for the Maple Leafs?
Well, I agree with what you said earlier. I think the goaltending kept them in it, and Toronto was able to pull it off. Power play was good. But no, I thought Stolarz was really good early.
Yeah, Berkey, what do you take so far of this season? Bit of hiccups, some ups and downs. What's your overall general thought of the first, 14 games of the season?
Well, they're still sorting things out. I think they have to get rid of a couple of bodies. I think they're trying to sort out when Robertson plays, when he doesn't, when Lorentz plays, when Reeves plays. And Rosie, that gets old. If you're one of the guys who's just because of numbers, you're not getting regular ice, regular turn to play even. I think that gets old. So they'll sort that out, I think. And I like their group.
Berkey, any theories, like we've been talking about this yesterday and today, any theories as to why the Leafs seem to rise to the occasion without Matthews? They're now 36, 19, and 2 all time without Matthews in the lineup.
Yeah, they should get rid of him.
Trade him right now.
No, I think really what it is, the team banding around and rallying around the guy and saying, we've lost our best player. Other guys have to grab the rope and pull harder. And I think that's exactly what happened last night. I thought it was Marner's best game in a while. I thought Morgan Riley was really good. I thought they were sharp.
What have you been seeing out of this power play? Obviously, they rectified some things last night without Austin Matthews. But as far as the struggles that this offensively powered team has had, what's your take on that?
Well, you've heard me say this, Rosie, because you played for me. I believe that when your power play's not working, you don't change the personnel. You change what you do. You go low to high and hammer it, get two guys in front of the net, puck goes in off someone's ass, you get back on track. I think there's a real simplified, their breakouts are good. They get in easily. They get in cleanly most of the time. But I think they've got to simplify their power play when it's not working. I'm a big believer in that.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a bit of a delay. The last time we spoke to you was in early July. I think you were in favor of some of the roster moves they made. Rosie and I have been on record in saying we like this style, this brand. Is this what you envisioned the Brian Burke Maple Leafs looking like 10 years ago?
Well, they were a little tougher than this group, I can tell you that. But that's not them. I do like the way it's going with them and with Boston. Last night was a hard-hitting game. I was at the game. Saw you there, Nick. It was a hard-hitting game. Boston hits hard, and they hit to punish you. And Toronto had to answer that bell last night. I thought they did a good job. And I agree with what Rosie said. I said to Cam Neely after the first period, I love the refereeing. I didn't like it after the first period. I spoke too soon. But reversing major penalties at phantom calls, not throwing fives and fours at guys for no good reason. Guys turning their checks and get drilled. Shouldn't be a penalty, wasn't. So I really liked the way the game was officiated early. And then it was like 10 or 12 ticky-tack penalties. Garbage calls for me.
Yeah, well, what do you think the reasoning is for? I mean, obviously, the league in the last 10, 15 years has tried to bump the offense up. And, you know, you can go back as far as when they had obstruction and you're trying to just open the game up and showcase the skill. I think with the scoring numbers and the way guys are talented now, that has been achieved. What do you think the reasoning is for calling this ticky-tack? Oh, his stick went under his gloves and he didn't even lose the puck and then arm goes up. Like, what's the purpose of that?
I don't really know. From talking to the officials about it, I've asked them that question. And I used to tell them when I was in charge of officiating, because people forget this, when I did discipline, I was also in charge of officiating. Now, Brian Lewis was our referee in chief. He was a wonderful man, great official, but I was in charge of I was their boss. I would tell the officials, watch for penalties. Don't look for penalties. There's a big difference. Call what you have to call, but don't look for calls. Don't manufacture calls.
Yeah.
And I thought last night, especially the power play goal scorer, I thought guys were trying to even things up. So I said, I just called one on Toronto and they scored on the power play. I better give Boston a power play. You can't officiate that way. So I don't think it was poor officiating last night. I think it was managed and response-oriented.
Really felt that way for sure. We talked about Nick Robertson a bit earlier on. I would love you to put your GM hat and how difficult it is to move on from a player, because Rosie and I have been talking about this quite a bit the last couple of months. It just feels like we're at the end of his tenure as a Maple Leaf. What do you think happens here with Nick Robertson? How do you feel about the player?
Well, I like the player. Everyone does, but he's not what they need. The problem is he's a square peg in a round hole for me. He's a good player. He's a good kid from everything I see. And he's a guy that should be playing in the league, but it doesn't mean he has to be playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So to me, they've got a lot of players like that, high skill guys that can make plays, but not enough guys with jam or big bodies. So to me, it's a logical piece to move. I thought moving Liljegren made good sense. I thought that was sensible. I think Brad Sleving's done a pretty good job. He's a smart guy, but I think it's time maybe to move on from Nick or move a player like Nick and give him more ice time. But the shuffling in and out in different lineups every night, that gets old. Players don't like it.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. we've seen some inconsistency with the team, but when the team's playing well, it seems like a different brand of hockey than the Leafs have played the last few years. Are you a believer in what Craig Berube has tried to do so far with this group?
Well, I think they're the biggest team in the league. And you look at Vegas. Vegas has had the biggest defense in the league for 5 years. They've been one of the best teams for 5 years. There's a correlation whether you like that style of hockey or not. Size matters. It does matter. And I like the fact I think the Leafs are the biggest team in the league right now by half a pound, right? You know how that works. But they're the largest team in the league, and that shows in the way they play. They got hit hard last night. It didn't bother them one bit. They threw some big hits back themselves. But I like the changes. I like the goaltending. I don't know if Joseph Wall can stay healthy or not, but they've gotten good goaltending. If he can stay healthy, they should be really able to pack a 1-2 punch and have a battery of goaltenders, which is what you want, 50-30 split.
I was going to say larger in the crease, like Anthony Stolarz. Berkey, I read the stat earlier on. Can you believe only 2 netminders in the last